Let me first say that I'm just very grateful to the Asia Foundation, to Vikram for joining us, to Nikki, and to all of you for coming. To get out of the way, the two obvious questions, the answers are yes. Yes, I will be signing Vikram's book. And yes, I do think it's an unfair advantage that he had a practice debate with Professor Yunus a few weeks ago. I want to say at the outset, seriously, that Grameen Foundation, we're not against commercial approaches. We think commercial approaches have their role in microfinance. In fact, one of our signature programs around loan guarantees has been pushing that quite aggressively. Also, we're not against IPOs per se. They have pros and cons like any strategy to mobilize capital. Also, at the outset, I will say I have great admiration for Vikram and what he's done. As someone who's been involved in this field for 22 years, someone who's built an organization myself, I have a sense that he's done something extremely impressive. Grameen Foundation also, be very clear, has been supportive, have played our own small role in the SKS success story, and we view our investment as a good one. And we have not been investing much in terms of our talent and our money in recent years, but we were involved to a degree in early years. But we have some disagreements. There are reasons why we don't feel it was a great investment, and I'll explain those. But I will say also that is unlike a growing number of US-based microfinance nonprofits, we don't seek to own and control the organizations we support. And I see that as a worrying trend that we are not part of. I think that the Indian microfinance decisions and mistakes and achievements are to be made by Indians, not by us. And so we don't seek to control our own MFIs anywhere in the world. So what are our disagreements? I'll say that, first of all, I generally put MFIs into three categories: unethical, ethical and profit maximizing, and ethical and social purpose driven. I think the unethical, we're not talking about that here, but it's a growing issue in our field. Fly-by-night MFIs that collect savings, give loans, take advantage of poor people. I say Vikram has moved fairly precipitously in the last few years towards the profit maximizing, ethical, but basically about maximizing profit, hoping that that will somehow benefit the poor, but that's really a secondary in terms of the achievement metrics. So what would it look like if, what am I talking about, the social purpose-driven MFI? What decisions could Vikram have made in his model that we have, in fact, had many spirited discussions about? First of all, whole areas around social performance, of whether you benchmark your impact on poverty and your poverty reduction outcomes to international standards and make that one of the key public benchmarks of your performance. So organizations, 75 and counting organizations and networks, have adopted our tool, Poverty Index, that was developed by the Ford Foundation, CGAP, and Grameen Foundation. There are other tools, the Poverty Assessment Tool of the University of Maryland. So these are tools which allow for real visibility and accountability, and not just are you making a profit, but are people overcoming poverty, and in fact, are you dealing with the poor to begin with? SKS has chosen not to use any of those international tools, to my knowledge. SKS has also not undergone an external social rating, to my knowledge, which is a way to have externally to come in and say, are your practices consistent with being responsive to the poor, again, benchmarked against international, there are about 150 organizations that have a social rating. Nor is SKS commissioned, much less paid for, despite its profits, an external impact study using, for example, the RCT, the randomized controlled trial methodology. So this would allow for a scorecard on not just are they making profits, but are people coming out of poverty. And so groups that are social purpose driven gravitate towards these measures of success. Second of all, I think social purpose driven MFIs, there are many ways to do it, place limitations on private benefit to the management, to the owners, and especially to foreign investors. Some of them have adopted caps on the profitability of the organization. Any profitability beyond that gets channeled into lower interest rates for clients. And we can debate reasonable limitations on private benefit in the microfinance case, but I think that if you look at the public data, probably by most standards, reasonable limitations have not been the case as SKS has gone to market and people have cashed in on this big success story. Thirdly, I think another hallmark of this is where client benefit, especially in a case like an IPO, is a hallmark. Grameen Bank, as you know, is owned 95% by its clients. SKS actually built in client ownership early on, but once the IPO happened, the clients didn't have any direct financial benefit. And so this I think was a gap, even though the shares that they were staked to own are worth about $220 million according to CGAP. So there are other models of MFIs. Other models of MFIs that are social purpose driven. And many of them have gone to significant scale. The Grameen Bank, where the CEO and the management own no shares of Grameen Bank. They own no shares of any Grameen company, including several that are extremely profitable, like Grameen Phone. The profits that are generated, and Grameen Bank is profitable now, go to student loans for clients' children, go to a beggars program for the ultra poor, and go to dividends to its owners, the poor women who borrow from it. Also, Grameen did something that on a commercial terms makes no sense, helped create an organization to provide low interest loans to its competitors, to help grow the microfinance sector. And by the way, one of the reasons why Grameen is not serving more than 8 million borrowers is there's hardly any woman in Bangladesh who doesn't have a microloan right now. The market is saturated. It would be unethical for them to try to grow beyond that within Bangladesh, because actually Grameen helped stoke the competition, which created a vibrant marketplace. And so they've grown to as much as they can really grow within that country. Also, there's the ownership, as I mentioned, is almost all clients and no foreign ownership of Grameen. The interest rate, so 20% or less, that's the highest interest rate. Grameen could have charged more to maximize profits and wow potential investors early in its years. Couldn't now because competition is too fierce, but chose not to on ethical grounds. And importantly, savings was an engine of the capital to grow, not external investment. I was just at a group in Ethiopia, the largest MFI in Africa. They're an example of this. I won't go into it. Also, Equitas and even ProCredit, but these are two highly commercial organizations, have agreed to voluntarily cap their return on equity in order to demonstrate that they're not simply profit maximizing in all respects. Investors also have shown that they're willing to put money behind socially motivated organizations. In fact, one estimate is there's $2.7 trillion of socially motivated capital invested in the US marketplace right now. So why is this important? Is this just trying to have some Boy Scout standard for microfinance? Well, I think that there's by MFIs adhering to social purpose ideals, they create the political space for policymakers and politicians to let microfinance grow and interact in a commercial way with the poor, which is still controversial in many cultures. And by adopting these social performance metrics, by putting limitations on private benefit and foreign ownership and foreign benefit, foreign investor benefit, you often can get tax breaks, but even more importantly, avoid interest rate caps, which could be destructive. India right now, and perhaps in part because of the IPO, that SKS and the way they went about it, is now undergoing significant, at the federal and the state level, significant government threats of regulation, which could be very destructive. And in fact, the situation in Andhra Pradesh right now, I don't have the most current information, is very distressing, where some very highly ethical practitioners of microfinance are being threatened by being put in jail for doing microfinance. So this has become very politicized. And I think in any country where where you don't have social impact metrics built in, and where there's significant private benefit, one might say excessive private benefit from people who are not poor in microfinance, that controversy can be stoked and it can shrink the political space for microfinance to operate. And this is one of the things I think Professor Yunus did by organizing it the way he did and reaching total saturation within that country between him and his competitors. He did it by an ethical standard that was so high that the political space was there to reach that saturation point, a point that India is still a long way from, and we hope that that this potential backlash and crackdown will not stop it from reaching that saturation point that Bangladesh has achieved. Thank you.
Thank you, Alex. So